A judge sneered at Karoline Leavitt in open court, mocking her youth, until Pam Bondi stormed in and slapped handcuffs on him minutes later. "You won't believe the explosive twist that turned this trial upside down. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, New York, Texas, or somewhere else, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping story. Justice just got real, and it's only the beginning." Karoline Leavitt stepped into the courtroom with the confidence of someone twice her age. At 27, she'd already made history as the youngest White House press secretary ever, a role that had toughened her against the toughest critics. Today, though, wasn't about press briefings or dodging reporters' questions. It was about justice. She was here representing the Trump administration, facing down a corruption case that could shake the foundations of power. In her hands, she clutched a thick stack of documents, financial records, contracts, and a bombshell she wasn't ready to reveal just yet. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, landing on the defendant, Daniel Pierce, a wealthy real estate developer with a reputation for greasing palms. He sat at the defense table, his tailored suit pristine, a faint smirk tugging at his lips like he'd already won. Across from her, Judge Edward Grayson presided from the bench, his stern face etched with decades of rulings. At 68, he was a courtroom veteran, known for his iron grip and biting sarcasm. He adjusted his glasses, peering down at Leavitt with a mix of curiosity and disdain. She'd heard the whispers about Grayson, rumors of shady deals and a temper that could silence a room. Hours earlier, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, had pulled her aside with a warning. "Grayson's got a shadow hanging over him, Karoline. Watch your step." Leavitt had nodded, filing it away. She wasn't here to play it safe. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Leavitt approached the plaintiff's table. Reporters scribbled notes, jurors shifted in their seats, and Pierce's lawyer, Michael Reed, a slick 50-something in a gray suit, leaned back with a smug grin. Then Grayson's voice cut through the hum, deep and deliberate. "Miss Leavitt," he began, his tone dripping with condescension, "this is a courtroom, not a press room. I hope the White House didn't send a little girl to play at law." A ripple of gasps spread through the room. Pierce chuckled softly, and Reed's grin widened. Leavitt didn't flinch. She raised her chin, meeting Grayson's gaze head-on. "And I'm here to present the truth, Your Honor," she replied, her voice steady and clear, "not to be judged by your outdated biases." The words landed like a quiet thunderclap, silencing the murmurs. Grayson's eyes narrowed, his fingers tapping the bench, a habit that signaled he was sizing her up. She set her documents down, resting a hand on the top page. "Daniel Pierce stands accused of embezzling millions in public funds," she said, her tone firm. "I have evidence, bank statements, contracts, and more, that proves he funneled taxpayer money into his own pockets. And it doesn't stop with him." She let that hang, a deliberate hint that Grayson caught. His brow furrowed, but he masked it with a scoff. "Bold claims, Miss Leavitt," Grayson said, leaning forward. "This court doesn't run on hints and headlines. You'd better have more than a stack of papers to back that up." His voice carried a warning, but Leavitt sensed the unease beneath it. She nodded slightly, unfazed. "I do, Your Honor. Let's start with this." She pulled out a bank statement marked in red ink. "This shows a $5 million transfer from a city project fund to an account tied to Pierce's company. Far more than the approved $2 million. No documentation, no explanation." Pierce shifted in his seat, his smirk fading. Reed shot up. "Objection, Your Honor, she's speculating without foundation." Grayson raised a hand, silencing him. "Sit down, Mr. Reed. I'll decide what's speculation." He turned back to Leavitt, his gaze icy. "Miss Leavitt, numbers on a page don't prove a crime. Explain yourself, or I'll assume you're wasting my time." Leavitt took a slow breath, keeping her cool. She'd faced worse than Grayson's barbs in the White House briefing room. "Your Honor," she said, her voice rising just enough to command attention, "this isn't just a number. It's a trail. Witnesses confirm Pierce used that money for personal gain, luxury homes, private jets. I've got their statements right here." She tapped the file, her eyes locked on Grayson's. "If you'll let me proceed, I'll connect every dot." Grayson leaned back, arms crossed. "Witnesses and dots," he muttered, his tone mocking. "I've heard plenty of stories in 40 years on this bench, Miss Leavitt. I expect hard facts, not fairy tales. You're young, maybe too young, to know the difference." The jab stung, but Leavitt didn't blink. "Age doesn't determine competence, Your Honor," she shot back. "The truth does, and I've got plenty of it." A faint murmur rippled through the jurors. A woman in a green sweater, about 60, frowned at Grayson, as if his attitude rubbed her wrong. Pierce whispered something to Reed, who scribbled furiously. Grayson tapped his bench again, louder this time. "Proceed," he said, his voice tight. "But I'm watching every step. This isn't a game." Leavitt gave a curt nod. "I wouldn't dream of playing one, Your Honor." She pulled out a contract, holding it up. "This is signed between Pierce's company and the City Planning Commission. It lists a $2 million project cost, but the $5 million transfer tells a different story. Fraud doesn't hide in fine print when you know where to look." She set it down, her gaze shifting between Pierce and Grayson, and him just getting started. Pierce's hands clenched on the table, his knuckles white. Reed leaned over, whispering, but Pierce waved him off, his eyes darting to Grayson. The judge's face tightened. "Miss Leavitt," he said, his voice low and sharp, "you're throwing around serious accusations. Fraud's a big word. You'd better have ironclad proof, or I'll shut this down faster than you can say press release." Leavitt met his stare, unflinching. "I respect your caution, Your Honor," she said, her tone polite but edged with steel. "That's why I propose an independent audit of these records, unless, of course, you'd rather dismiss the truth before it's fully uncovered." The challenge hung in the air, bold and deliberate. Grayson's fingers froze mid-tap, his jaw tightening. "An audit," he repeated, his voice a growl. "You don't run this courtroom, Miss Leavitt. I do." "Then prove it," she replied, calm but firm. "Let the evidence speak, or are you afraid of what it might say?" The room went dead silent, every eye on Grayson. He glared at her, a storm brewing behind his glasses. Leavitt stood tall, ready for the fight. She'd come prepared, and she wasn't backing down. Karoline Leavitt stood firm at the plaintiff's table, her stack of documents a silent weapon in her hands. She had already dropped the first bomb, a $5 million transfer tied to Daniel Pierce. And now she was ready to dig deeper. Judge Edward Grayson loomed from the bench, his stern face a mask of authority, but Leavitt could see the cracks forming. At the defense table, Pierce sat rigid, his earlier smirk replaced by a tight-lipped frown. His lawyer, Michael Reed, leaned back, arms crossed, exuding arrogance. The courtroom held its breath, waiting for her next move. Leavitt slid a set of invoices from her file, holding them up. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and unwavering. "These are fake invoices from Pierce's company, claiming payments for work never done. They justify the $5 million transfer I mentioned, money that ended up in his personal account." She paused, letting the weight sink in. "Taxpayers funded his private empire, and I've got the paper trail to prove it." Grayson cut in before she could finish, his voice sharp as a whip. "Miss Leavitt, you're tossing around allegations like confetti. This court demands hard proof, not stacks of paper you wave like a flag. Can you swear these aren't forged?" His tone was a challenge, daring her to falter. Leavitt didn't blink. "I can, Your Honor," she shot back, her eyes locked on his. "These came straight from the Justice Department's investigation. If you doubt them, let's call in the auditors. The truth doesn't hide from scrutiny. Unless someone's got a reason to bury it." Her words were a jab, and Grayson's jaw tightened. Reed sprang up, his voice dripping with mockery. "Objection!" "She's grandstanding, Your Honor. This is a fishing expedition, not evidence. Where's the chain of custody? She's making it up as she goes." He flashed a smug grin, glancing at Pierce, who nodded faintly. Leavitt turned to Reed, her tone icy. "I don't need to fish when the catch is already on the table, Mr. Reed. Your client's signature is on every invoice. Care to explain why he billed the city for phantom projects?" She slapped the papers down, the sound echoing in the tense silence. Grayson banged his gavel, cutting through the exchange. "Enough. Miss Leavitt, you'll address me, not counsel, and you'd better have more than signatures. Those can be faked by anyone with a pen and a grudge. Give me something solid, or I'll toss this whole circus out." "Solid?" Leavitt replied, her voice rising with controlled fire. "How about a bank record showing the $5 million hitting Pierce's account the day after these invoices cleared? Or do you think the bank's lying too, Your Honor?" She pulled out a statement, marked in red, and held it up. "This isn't a theory, it's a fact." Pierce shifted, whispering furiously to Reed, who shot back, "She's twisting numbers to fit her story. Your Honor, this is a smear campaign dressed up as justice. She's got nothing." Leavitt spun on him. "Nothing? Tell that to the taxpayers footing the bill for your client's yacht, Mr. Reed. I've got witness statements. City workers who say Pierce's projects never broke ground. Want me to call them up here?" Her gaze darted to Grayson. "Or does the court prefer to ignore them?" Grayson's eyes flashed. "You watch your tone, Miss Leavitt," he growled. "I've run this bench longer than you've been alive. Witnesses can lie, documents can be doctored. You're throwing mud and hoping it sticks. Prove it's real, or sit down." "I'll prove it," Leavitt said, her voice cutting like steel. "Here's a contract. Pierce's company in the city, signed for $2 million, but the transfer was $5 million. Where'd the extra go? Straight to him." "That's not mud, Your Honor. That's theft." She slid the contract forward, her stare unrelenting. Reed laughed, a harsh bark. "Your Honor, she's clutching at straws. That contract's standard business. She's inventing a crime because she's out of her depth." He leaned toward Pierce, muttering, "She's got no legs to stand on." Leavitt didn't miss a beat. "Out of my depth? I'm swimming in your client's dirty money, Mr. Reed. That contract's got a signature you won't laugh off soon. Care to guess whose?" She flipped to the last page, holding it high, but didn't name the signer yet. A deliberate tease. Grayson slammed his gavel again. "Miss Leavitt, stop playing games. If you've got a name, spit it out. I won't tolerate theatrics in my courtroom. Who signed it?" Leavitt met his glare, unflinching. "I'll get there, Your Honor, but first let's talk about this." She pulled another document, a subcontract tied to Pierce's firm. "This lists a $3 million payment to a contractor that doesn't exist. Fake company, real money. And it's got a signature I'd bet you'll recognize." Her voice dropped, heavy with implication. Reed jumped up again. "Objection! She's implying without proof this is slander, Your Honor. She's dragging us through her fantasies." Pierce nodded, his face paling slightly. "Slander," Leavitt snapped, turning to Reed. "Tell me, counselor, who fakes a company to pocket $3 million? Your client's not that creative? Or is he?" She faced Grayson. "Your Honor, I'm not implying. I'm showing. This signature ties the fraud to someone in this room." Grayson leaned forward, his voice a low rumble. "Miss Leavitt, you're dancing on thin ice. If that signature's not ironclad, I'll have you sanctioned for contempt. Name it, or I'm done listening." Leavitt held his gaze, her pulse steady. "I respect your rules, Your Honor," she said, her tone calm but loaded. "That's why I propose an independent audit. Let the experts verify every line, unless you'd rather dismiss this now and explain why later." It was a dare, and Grayson's fingers twitched on the gavel. "An audit?" he barked, his face reddening. "You think you're the one calling shots here? I've presided over cases bigger than you can dream, little girl. I decide what's verified, not you." His voice boomed, but Leavitt heard the strain. She stood taller. "I'm not calling shots, Your Honor. I'm calling for justice. If you've got nothing to hide, why fight it? Or does the truth scare you more than I do?" Her words hit like a punch, and the room froze. Reed seized the moment. "She's baiting you, Your Honor. She's got no case. Just hot air and a vendetta. Shut her down." Pierce nodded, his eyes darting nervously. Grayson glared at Leavitt, his breathing heavy. "Miss Leavitt, you're testing me. One more stunt, and you're out. Present your next piece now, or I'll end this." Leavitt nodded, cool as ice. "Gladly, Your Honor. Let's see how you handle this." She reached for the subcontract again, her fingers brushing the signature line. The fight was far from over, and she was just warming up. Karoline Leavitt stood at the plaintiff's table, her hands steady as she held the subcontract that could unravel everything. She'd already laid the groundwork, fake invoices, a $5 million transfer, and now this. A $3 million deal with a ghost company tied to Daniel Pierce. The courtroom crackled with tension, every eye on her. Judge Edward Grayson sat rigid on the bench, his stern face a wall of defiance. At the defense table, Pierce gripped the edge, his earlier confidence crumbling. His lawyer, Michael Reed, watched with a scowl, ready to pounce. Leavitt knew this was the moment to strike. She flipped the subcontract to the signature page and held it high. "Your Honor," she said, her voice ringing clear, "this document approves a $3 million transfer to a contractor that doesn't exist." The money went straight to Pierce's personal account. "And the signature authorizing it? It's yours, Judge Grayson." She laid the paper down, her eyes locked on him, daring him to respond. The room erupted. Jurors gasped, reporters scribbled frantically, and Pierce snapped his head toward Reed, his voice a harsh whisper. "What the hell is she doing?" Reed shot up. "Objection, Your Honor, this is outrageous. Pure slander. She's got no proof." "That's your signature." His tone was shrill, but Leavitt caught the tremor in it. Grayson banged his gavel, the sound sharp but shaky. "Silence," he barked, his glare fixed on Leavitt. "Miss Leavitt, you're treading on dangerous ground. That's my signature, you say? Prove it, or I'll have you hauled out for contempt." "You think you can waltz in here and smear me?" His voice thundered, but his hands gripped the bench tight. Leavitt didn't flinch. "I don't smear, Your Honor. I reveal," she replied, her tone calm but cutting. "This signature matches every ruling you've signed in this court. But if you're so sure it's fake, explain this." She pulled a bank statement from her file, marked with a digital timestamp. "This confirms the $3 million hit Pierce's account 2 days after your approval. Coincidence? I don't think so." She slid it forward, her gaze unwavering. Grayson's face flushed red. "You're accusing me of fraud?" he roared. "I've served this bench for decades, longer than you've been breathing. That document's a lie, and I'll see you pay for this." His threat hung heavy, but Leavitt saw the panic flickering in his eyes. She stepped closer, her voice steady as steel. "Then tell me, Judge Grayson, is this your signature? Or are you saying someone forged it? Because if it's yours, you've got some explaining to do. If it's not, who's framing you? And why?" She held up the subcontract again, the black ink stark against the page. "Pick a story, Your Honor. The jury's waiting." Pierce slammed his hand on the table, his voice cracking. "She's lying. I don't know anything about this." Reed grabbed his arm, hissing, "Shut up, Daniel." But the damage was done. Pierce's outburst drew every eye. Reed turned to Grayson, desperate. "Your Honor, she's turning this into a circus. That bank record's inadmissible. Where's the authentication?" Grayson raised a hand, silencing Reed mid-sentence. "Sit down, Mr. Reed," he snapped, his voice low and dangerous. "I'll handle this." He leaned forward, staring Leavitt down. "Miss Leavitt, you're throwing wild accusations in my courtroom. I don't sign shady deals. I don't need to. You've got one chance to back this up, or I'll end you right here." Leavitt met his stare, unflinching. "I don't need chances, Your Honor. I've got facts," she said, her tone sharp. "This isn't wild. It's airtight. The Justice Department pulled this straight from Pierce's accounts. Your signature's the key, and you can't dodge it." She tapped the bank statement. "Want to call it fake? Fine. Let's get an independent audit, unless you're afraid of what they'll find." Grayson's gavel hit the bench hard, the bang echoing. "You don't dictate terms to me," he shouted. "I've crushed bigger threats than you, little girl. You're bluffing, and I'll prove it. That signature's not mine. Someone's playing you." His denial was fierce, but his voice wavered, betraying him. Leavitt pounced. "Playing me? Then who's playing you, Judge? Because this," she held up the subcontract, "has your name all over it. And this," she waved the bank statement, "shows the money moving. You're tied to Pierce, and the evidence doesn't lie. Care to tell the jury why?" Her words sliced through the chaos, pinning him. The courtroom spun into disorder. A juror, a gray-haired man in a brown jacket, whispered to his neighbor, "She's got him cornered." Reporters shouted questions, pens flying. Pierce stood, his face pale, yelling, "I didn't sign him up for this. He came to me." Reed yanked him down, snarling, "Stop talking, you idiot." But Pierce's panic fueled the fire. Grayson pounded his gavel again, his face a mask of fury. "Order!" he bellowed. "Miss Leavitt, you're crossing a line you can't uncross. I'll have your career for this. Mark my words." His threat was venomous, but Leavitt saw the sweat beading on his brow. She stood taller, her voice rising clear and firm. "My career's not on trial, Your Honor. Your integrity is. You signed this deal, and Pierce cashed it. Threaten me all you want, but you can't scare the truth away. Explain it, or let the jury decide." She set the documents down, a quiet challenge in her stance. Reed tried again, his voice tight. "Your Honor, she's bullying the court. This is a setup. Those papers could be doctored. We demand a recess to review." He gestured wildly, but Grayson waved him off, his eyes never leaving Leavitt. "Quiet, Reed," Grayson growled. "I don't need your help." He leaned back, breathing hard, then fixed Leavitt with a cold stare. "You think you've got me, Miss Leavitt? You're a fool. I don't bow to kids with big mouths. Prove that signature's mine, beyond a shadow of a doubt, or I'll bury you." Leavitt didn't waver. "Bury me?" she shot back, her tone icy. "You're the one sinking, Judge. This isn't just paper. It's your handwriting, your approval, your mess. I've got more if you want it, but the jury's already seeing the picture." She glanced at the jurors, catching their wide-eyed stares. Grayson's hands shook as he gripped the gavel. "You're done here," he said, his voice low and menacing. "One more word, and I'll hold you in contempt. Present your next move, or get out." Leavitt nodded, calm but resolute. "Oh, I've got more, Your Honor," she said, reaching for her file. "And you won't like it one bit." She pulled out another document, her fingers brushing the edge, ready to escalate. The room hung on a razor's edge, Grayson cornered, Pierce unraveling, and Leavitt holding the reins. The storm was just beginning. Karoline Leavitt stood at the plaintiff's table, her hand resting on a slim folder that held her next weapon. She'd just exposed Judge Edward Grayson's signature on a $3 million deal with Daniel Pierce, and the courtroom was still reeling. Grayson glared from the bench, his face a storm of fury and fear. Pierce sat hunched at the defense table, his hands trembling, while his lawyer, Michael Reed, scribbled notes in a frantic bid to regain control. The jurors leaned forward, their eyes darting between Leavitt and Grayson. She took a steady breath. This was the knockout punch. "Your Honor," Leavitt began, her voice calm but piercing, "I've shown your signature tying you to Pierce's fraud. Now, let's hear it from you directly." She opened the folder and pulled out a transcript, then nodded to the court clerk. "Please set up the recorder. Everyone needs to hear this." The clerk, a nervous man in his 50s, fumbled with the device, placing it on the table. Leavitt pressed play, and a faint static crackled before Grayson's deep, unmistakable voice filled the room. "Don't let her dig too deep, Pierce," the recording growled. "Those contracts can't see daylight." "I'll bury them if she gets close," a second voice replied, tense and hurried. "She's a problem, Ed. What if she finds the transfers?" Grayson's response was cold. "She won't. I'll make sure of it." The courtroom exploded. Jurors gasped, a woman in a green sweater covering her mouth in shock. Reporters shouted over each other, pens flying. Pierce bolted upright, his face white, yelling, "That's not me! It's fake!" Reed grabbed his arm, hissing, "Sit down, you fool!" But the damage was done. Grayson's voice echoed like a death knell. Grayson slammed his gavel, the bang feeble against the chaos. "This recording is illegal," he roared, his voice cracking. "I demand it be stricken. This is a violation of my court." His eyes blazed, but sweat glistened on his forehead, betraying his panic. Leavitt stepped forward, her tone icy and precise. "Illegal? The Justice Department obtained this through a lawful wiretap, Your Honor. Are you scared of the truth, or just your own voice?" She held up the transcript, her gaze locked on him. "You're on tape plotting with Pierce to hide evidence. That's not a violation. It's a confession." Grayson shot to his feet, his hands gripping the bench. "You're twisting this," he bellowed. "I won't let you sabotage my courtroom with some doctored nonsense. I demand a pause right now, until this is verified." His voice shook, a desperate edge cutting through his authority. Leavitt didn't budge. "Pause all you want, Judge," she fired back, "but this isn't going away. The wiretap's legal, the voices are yours, and the jury's hearing every word. Want to explain why you're protecting Pierce, or should I keep going?" She waved the transcript, her challenge sharp as a blade. Reed leapt up, his voice shrill. "Objection! This is a setup! Pure theater! Your Honor, she's railroading you with unverified garbage!" He pointed at Leavitt, his hand trembling. "We need time to debunk this fraud." Grayson waved him off, his glare fixed on Leavitt. "Shut up, Reed," he snapped, his breathing heavy. "I don't need you whining." "Miss Leavitt, you think this cheap trick breaks me? I've faced worse than you in 40 years. That tape's a lie. I never said those things." His denial was fierce, but his fists clenched, knuckles white. Leavitt tilted her head, her voice low and lethal. "A lie? Your voice matches perfectly, Judge, and Pierce's does too. He's not denying it hard enough." She glanced at Pierce, who shrank under her stare, then back to Grayson. "You're caught, Your Honor. Want to tell us who else is in on this, or do I need another tape?" Pierce cracked, his voice a ragged shout. "I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. Just don't pin it all on me." He turned to Grayson, wild-eyed. "You dragged me into this, Ed. You said it was safe." Reed yanked him down, snarling, "You're ruining us." But Pierce's plea rang out, silencing the room for a split second. Grayson's face twisted with rage. "You sniveling coward," he spat at Pierce. "Keep your mouth shut." He swung back to Leavitt, his voice a growl. "You've got nothing, Miss Leavitt. Just a coward's word and a fake recording. I'll have this thrown out and you disbarred." His threat was venomous, but his authority was slipping. Leavitt stood tall, her tone unshaken. "Disbar me? I'm not the one on trial, Judge. You are. Pierce is singing, your voice is on tape, and the Justice Department's got the receipts. This isn't fake, it's your collapse." She set the transcript down, her eyes burning into his. "The jury's not blind. They see it." The jurors stirred, a gray-haired man muttering, "He's done for." Another nodded, whispering, "She's got him cold." Reporters surged forward, shouting, "Judge, any comment?" Grayson banged his gavel again, weaker this time. "Order," he yelled, but his voice was drowned by the uproar. Reed tried one last stand. "Your Honor, she's bullying the court. This tape's inadmissible. Chain of custody's a mess. Give us a recess." His desperation was palpable, but Grayson ignored him, his focus on Leavitt. "You're finished," Grayson hissed, leaning forward. "I'll bury you for this. I don't care what it takes. You've got no proof this is real." His defiance was a last gasp, but Leavitt saw the cracks widening. She crossed her arms, her voice steady as granite. "No proof? The Justice Department says otherwise, Judge, and Pierce is begging for mercy. He's not lying about you. Want to keep denying it, or should I call for a federal probe right now?" Her words were a hammer, smashing his defenses. Grayson's hands shook as he gripped the gavel. "A probe?" he snarled. "You don't have the power. I run this court. You're a child playing with fire, and I'll burn you down." His threat was hollow, his voice breaking under the strain. Leavitt didn't flinch. "You don't run anything anymore, Your Honor," she shot back. "This tape ends you. I'm asking for federal investigators to take over. Let them dig into your deals with Pierce. Unless you've got a better story," she turned to the jurors, her voice firm, "they deserve the truth." Pierce broke again, his voice a sob. "I'll testify. It was his idea, I swear." Reed shoved him, shouting, "Stop it, Daniel!" But the room was chaos. Jurors murmuring, reporters yelling. Grayson's gavel useless. His face drained of color, his eyes locked on Leavitt, a cornered animal. Grayson slumped back, his voice a rasp. "You'll regret this," he muttered, but the fight was gone. Leavitt stood firm, the recorder silent now, its damage done. "Maybe," she said, her tone cold, "but you'll regret it more." The courtroom teetered on the edge, Grayson's reign crumbling, Pierce unraveling, and Leavitt ready to push it all down. Karoline Leavitt stood at the plaintiff's table, her eyes steady as the courtroom buzzed with the fallout of the recording. Judge Edward Grayson slumped on the bench, his face pale, hands trembling after his voice had betrayed him on tape. Daniel Pierce sat at the defense table, his head in his hands, muttering to himself. while Michael Reed, his lawyer, whispered furiously, trying to salvage a sinking ship. The jurors watched in stunned silence, their faith in Grayson shattered. Leavitt had pushed him to the edge, and now the final blow was coming. The double doors at the back of the courtroom burst open with a loud thud, cutting through the chaos. Pam Bondi, United States Attorney General, strode in, her black suit crisp, her blonde hair pulled back tight. At 64, she carried the authority of decades in law enforcement, her presence a force of nature. Behind her, 2 Justice Department officers in dark uniforms followed, their faces grim, handcuffs glinting at their belts. Reporters spun around, cameras flashing, as Bondi's heels clicked on the floor, each step a declaration. Leavitt turned, a faint nod passing between them, silent confirmation of a plan perfectly executed. Bondi stopped at the center of the room, her voice low but commanding. "Judge Edward Grayson," she said, her words slicing the air. "By my authority as Attorney General, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit fraud, and abuse of judicial power." She locked eyes with him, unyielding. "Step down. Now." Grayson shot to his feet, his face twisting with rage and disbelief. "This is a legal coup," he shouted, his voice hoarse but defiant. "You can't barge in here and cuff me like some thug. I'm a judge." He banged his gavel, the sound weak against Bondi's resolve. Bondi stepped closer, her tone cold and final. "Not anymore, Grayson. This isn't a coup. It's justice, and you can't run from it. Your signature's on the deal, your voice is on the tape. You're done." She nodded to the officers, who moved toward the bench, their hands steady. Leavitt spoke up, her voice calm but firm, backing Bondi seamlessly. "You heard her, Your Honor. The evidence is overwhelming. Pierce's fraud, your cover-up, the jury's seen it all." She glanced at the jurors, catching a nod from the gray-haired man, then back to Grayson. "Resist if you want, but it's over." Grayson's eyes flashed with fury as he swung toward Leavitt. "You," he spat, pointing a shaking finger. "You set me up. This is your doing. You and your attack dog here think you can ruin me with a rigged game." His accusation was wild, but Leavitt saw the desperation behind it. He was grasping at straws. Bondi cut in, her voice sharp. "Rigged? The only game here was yours, Grayson. Cooking the books with Pierce. Don't blame her for catching you." She turned to Pierce, her gaze piercing. "And you? What's your excuse, Daniel? Thought you'd skate free while he took the fall?" Pierce snapped upright, his voice a panicked plea. "I didn't want this," he yelled, turning on Grayson. "You pulled me in, Ed. You said it was foolproof. I'll tell them everything, names, dates, all of it. Just don't let me drown alone." His betrayal hit like a thunderclap, his eyes darting between Bondi and Leavitt, begging for mercy. Reed grabbed Pierce's shoulder, his voice a harsh whisper. "Shut your mouth, you idiot. You're burying us both." But Pierce shoved him off, his hands shaking. "No, I'm done protecting him. He sold me out first." He pointed at Grayson, his fear morphing into rage. And Grayson lunged forward, his voice a snarl. "You spineless rat. You think squealing saves you? I'll drag you down with me." He glared at Bondi, then Leavitt. "This is a witch hunt. Political garbage. You're both Trump's puppets, and I'll prove it." His defiance was unhinged, a last stand against the inevitable. Leavitt crossed her arms, her tone cool but biting. "Puppets. I don't need strings to find the truth, Judge. You tied yourself to Pierce. Your greed did the rest. Call it what you want, but the jury's not buying your excuses." She glanced at Pierce. "And neither is he." Bondi nodded, her voice steady as steel. "She's right, Grayson. You're not a victim. You're a crook. Pierce is talking, the evidence is airtight, and your bench doesn't shield you anymore." She signaled the officers again. "Take him." The officers stepped up, one grabbing Grayson's arm. He jerked back, shouting, "This is an outrage. I demand a warrant. Due process. You can't do this." His voice cracked, his resistance crumbling as the second officer pulled out the cuffs. Bondi held up a folded paper, her eyes cold. "Here's your warrant, signed and sealed. You've had your process. Now face the consequences." The cuffs clicked shut on Grayson's wrists, the metallic snap echoing like a gavel's final strike. He stumbled, his head bowing as the officers pulled him down from the bench. Pierce watched, his face ashen, then turned to Bondi, his voice a whimper. "I'll cooperate, please. I've got kids. He made me do it." His plea was raw, a man unraveling under pressure. Leavitt met his gaze, her tone firm but not cruel. "You had a choice, Pierce. You picked wrong. Tell it to the feds. Maybe they'll listen." She looked at Bondi, a silent question in her eyes. Bondi gave a slight shake of her head. "No deals yet." Grayson twisted as the officers led him away, his voice a bitter rasp. "You think this ends me? I've got friends. Power you can't touch. You're fools. Both of you." His threat lingered, but his slumped shoulders told the real story. Bondi stepped beside Leavitt, her voice low, just for her. "Good work, Karoline. You broke him. I finished him. Team effort." Her tone held a rare warmth, a nod to their bond forged in this fight. Leavitt nodded back, her eyes sharp. "He's down, but not out. That friends line, he's not bluffing." Her voice was quiet, her mind already racing ahead. Bondi's jaw tightened. "Let him try. We'll root them out, one by one." She turned to the room, her voice rising. "This trial's paused. New judge coming. Justice isn't done yet." The courtroom erupted again, but Grayson's exit, cuffs glinting, was the image that stuck. Leavitt and Bondi standing tall amidst the storm. The courtroom buzzed with stunned murmurs as Judge Edward Grayson, hands cuffed, was led down from the bench by two Justice Department officers. His black robe hung loose, a symbol of authority stripped bare. Karoline Leavitt stood at the plaintiff's table, her posture steady, watching him go. Pam Bondi stood beside her, arms crossed, her sharp eyes tracking every move. Daniel Pierce slumped at the defense table, his face buried in his hands, while Michael Reed, his lawyer, scribbled notes in a futile attempt to regroup. The jurors whispered among themselves, a mix of shock and vindication in their voices. It looked like victory, but Leavitt felt a chill creeping in. Grayson stumbled as the officers tugged him toward the side door, then stopped abruptly, twisting to face Leavitt. His lips curled into a sinister smile, his eyes glinting with malice, despite the cuffs. "You think you've won, Miss Leavitt," he rasped, his voice low but venomous. "But I'm not the only one in this game," he chuckled, a dry, hollow sound that cut through the noise. "You're just a pawn, and the board's bigger than you know." His words hung like a dark cloud, a promise of trouble ahead. Leavitt met his gaze, her voice cool and unflinching. "If I'm a pawn, Grayson, then you've been checkmated a long time ago." She stepped forward, her tone hardening. "Keep laughing. It won't change the cuffs." But his smile lingered in her mind, a warning she couldn't shake. Bondi leaned in, her voice a quiet growl. "He's bluffing, Karoline, trying to spook you on his way out." She glanced at Grayson's retreating figure, her jaw tight. "But we'll dig into that board he's crowing about. He's not wrong about one thing. This isn't over." Her words were firm, but Leavitt caught the flicker of concern in her eyes, a rare crack in Bondi's armor. Before Grayson reached the door, Pierce bolted upright, his voice a desperate shout. "Wait! I'll give you more. There's others, big names." He turned to Bondi, his hands outstretched, pleading. "Senators, CEOs, they're all in it. Grayson wasn't the top, I swear." His panic was raw, his eyes darting between Bondi and Leavitt, a man clawing for a lifeline. Reed grabbed his arm, his voice a furious hiss. "Daniel, you're killing yourself, shut up!" But Pierce shook him off, his face flushed with fear and defiance. "No, I'm not dying for them. Grayson ran the show here, but he answered to someone. Ask him." He pointed at the judge, his finger trembling. Grayson spun back, his smile gone, replaced by a snarl. "You backstabbing worm," he barked. "You think they'll save you? You're dead either way." His outburst was wild, a cornered animal lashing out, but it confirmed Pierce's words. There was a deeper web. Bondi stepped toward Pierce, her tone cold but probing. "Names, Daniel. Give me names, or you're no use to me." She crossed her arms, her stare unrelenting. "You want a deal? Earn it, right now." Pierce swallowed hard, his voice shaking. I don't have them all, but there's a guy, Senator Hargrove from Virginia. He funneled cash through Grayson. And a developer, Mason Tate, they're linked. I've got emails. His confession spilled out, frantic and messy, a man trading his soul to survive. Leavitt's eyes narrowed, her mind racing. Hargrove and Tate, she muttered, glancing at Bondi. That's a start, but Grayson's hinting at more. We've cracked the surface, Pam. Her voice was steady, but her grip on the table tightened. A mix of resolve and unease. Bondi nodded, her expression grim. Surface is right. This isn't a win, it's a door. She turned to the officers. Get Grayson out of here. Pierce, you're coming too, separately. We'll sort your story at headquarters. She looked at Leavitt, her voice low. You lit the fuse, Karoline. Now we chase the blast. Grayson's laugh echoed as the officers dragged him through the door. Chase all you want, Bondi. You'll hit a wall. His taunt faded, but it left a sting. The room settled into a tense hush, reporters scrambling to catch Pierce's outburst on record. Later that night, Leavitt stood on her balcony in suburban D.C., the cool air brushing her face. Her phone buzzed, lighting up with a text from Bondi. Pierce gave us a list. Longer than we thought. Hargrove's just the tip. 7 a.m., my office. Be ready. Leavitt stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. Grayson's words replayed. The boards bigger, and Pierce's panic backed it up. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a fight she hadn't fully grasped. She typed back, I'll be there. We're not stopping. Slipping the phone into her pocket, she looked out at the dark skyline. Bondi's steal, Grayson's threat, Pierce's betrayal, they swirled in her mind, a puzzle with missing pieces. She thought of her son asleep inside, the future she was fighting for. Victory had felt close in court, but now it was a shadow, stretching far beyond Grayson's cuffs. The real battle loomed, and she was all in. What a ride, right? To me, this story screams a hard truth. Corruption festers where power goes unchecked, and it takes guts like Leavitt's and Bondi's to rip it open. Grayson's fall shows no one's untouchable, but his parting shot? Chilling. It's a reminder that justice isn't a clean win, it's a messy, ongoing fight. I see it as hope. Two women, one young, one seasoned, proving age and rank don't define strength. But maybe you disagree. Could they have pushed too hard, risking a backlash? Was Pierce flip a coward's move or a smart play? I'd love to hear your take. Drop it in the comments. Thanks for sticking with us through this wild tale. Your support keeps these stories alive. Hit subscribe, share your thoughts, and tell us where you're watching from. Let's keep the conversation rolling. Justice doesn't stop, and neither do we.